This is Fam Electric Ghost. We're live on the air time with Sonya Shelton. Welcome to the show. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here and excited for our conversation.
We want to let everybody know we are a featured podcast on Newsly platform. And if you use that coupon code below Ghost, you get 1 month free premium subscription. I said, we're a featured podcast. So this episode will be on Newsly later tonight. So you can stop scrolling and start listening. It's a tool that takes podcasts and converts them to audio so that people can listen to them. And it also creates alerts for your favorite podcast so you can know when there's a new episode. You get to listen to it when it comes out. So that's one of the things we appreciate our sponsor. And thank you for being on the program. And what we wanted to do tonight is basically we like to get topics. So put up the topic for it. The importance of discovering your why, how finding out what's really motivating will help you create a purposeful work experience. And we like to kind of have these new topics. Something new we started to integrate in the podcast is to kind of bring up what the focal point will be. So I don't know how you want to start with that, but you founded an executive leadership consulting ELC in 2007. Maybe you want to start from that point.
Yeah, absolutely. So the last job I'll ever have, I was the head of internal communications for the Walt Disney Company globally at a time when nobody in my position had ever experienced what I experienced, and nobody in that position will experience it again. And that is that we had a shareholder revolt led by Roy Disney, a member of the Disney family, against our CEO at the time, Michael Eisner. And so you can imagine being in the head of internal communications, basically with a company going through a divorce. I got to experience a lot of leadership lessons, both for myself as a leader, what the company went through, and really saw the best of both worlds. Right, Disney is known for having a really strong culture and being really good at culture, but also going through this traumatic experience as a company. I saw the worst of the worst too, right? And that's what made me decide to start executive leadership consulting based on my own why of having a bigger impact and taking those lessons that I learned through that experience and helping other companies develop really strong cultures.
Yeah, I kind of divorced, from I guess maybe like the traditional Disney structure, maybe controlled by a family, kind of business, even though it's a big, gigantic corporation. It did it have like the family kind of stamp on it, and then you have maybe the outside normal corporate structure fighting with a family kind of oriented structure. Is that kind of the fight?
Yeah, well, I think it wasn't the first time that Roy had done it in the company. He had done it when he brought Michael in, when he just saw the trajectory of the company not being in alignment with what the vision was, right, and
Mm,
saw that it was time for new leadership, and had to go about it the way that he went about it for it to be able to happen. But was a challenging time for the company, and I think for myself as a leader as well, because um, I think being in an environment, and I have tremendous empathy for people who are leading organizations of any size, right? That you in the environment that you're in has a big impact in how you show up. So even though I knew better, then I was sort of taking what was being given to me and passing it down. And I think that especially right now, in this time of a lot of uncertainty and a lot of change in the business environment, in the business world, and the world in general, that we can get caught up in that, and then potentially take it out on the people that work for us, right?
yeah. I mean, that's part of the reason why I went independent. I went into consulting for a lot of years. I was in Fortune 500 companies, and I'm an analyst. I was in management a couple of times. I was in Japan for a company called Hartford Life, and doing a big effort there to bring financial products into the Japanese market. And what we had there was we had a situation where we had this kind of the Japanese had a zero defect kind of methodology
Mhm.
that Americans had a hard time with, because Americans, like in IT, like if you've got a defect that's level 10, which is like the lowest level, the Japanese would look at all 10 levels of defects and say all of them are number one. Doesn't matter if it's a number 10 according to what the Americans are saying. Any defect, we got to go and get to a like a coliseum and apologize to our customers, and they will actually bow to the customers and have all the people come and bow to them and apologize for the errors.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
Americans don't do that,
No.
right? So we'd have, like, the Connecticut office button heads with the Japanese office because the Japanese office is saying, "We gotta go apologize for these errors," and the American office said, "Why?
Right.
We don't do
Right.
that." And so there was I was in the middle, because I was starting to kinda empathize with the Japanese philosophy because I was there for 2 years, and I started to understand why, because I was living there.
Mhm.
If you live
Mhm.
in Japan, you understand the market because 'cause you're in it. You understand why they do that. But back in Connecticut, they're like, "Well, they don't get it why they do that, because 'cause they're not there." So, yeah, I
Yes,
can kinda see.
absolutely. So you even there, you have one company with 2 different cultures because of their countries, right? So how do you then it becomes a challenge for leadership to say, "Okay, so how do we have the company culture across these 2 country cultures that have very different value systems?"
Yeah, we had to compromise. We had to get the Japanese to accept, more defects than they were usually comfortable with, and they've never really liked it
Yeah. Yeah.
because they were like, "That's not what we do."
Right.
And, we had to do a hard sell, and we had to go out, do the karaoke nights with all the managers and stuff, and it's like, it was a lot of greasing the palms, a lot of politics to get it to happen. And,
Sure.
you can see that's a kind of difficult scenario. So it seems like you're dealing with that kind of cultural aspect within maybe like Western companies or US companies.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, I kind of got out of that world and went home, and I've been a remote worker for like 5 years before even the pandemic. And being a podcaster kind of, is my side gig. I don't have to really show up. I show up like this, but yeah, it's a different world where, I'm in the music world. It's very independent. Like we don't have the gatekeepers we used to have.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
we have to do a lot of our own management. We have to do a lot of our own marketing. We have to do a lot of our own hiring. And so, yeah, we have to start running it like a business. And so, yeah, there's a lot of trends where, you get the people who want to be independent, but then they need services, they need processes, they need repeatable procedures. So, how do you get about like within the microcosm of the small business owner versus the bigger kind of mid-sized companies? Like, what kind of cultures do you deal with?
Yeah, so we really look at what is the business strategy, right? What is it that what is your purpose as a company or as a musician? What is your purpose? And then what is your vision and where you want to take that purpose? And we call that red thread where we start with why and then we take that purpose and vision and connect it through everything that you're doing so decision making becomes easier. It's all about, is this aligned with our purpose? Is it getting us where we want to go in our vision? And then the decisions get easier, and then you can also get more efficient in your processes because you can say, do we need to do it this way based on where we want to go? You can empower people to question that, right? So and as well as, who you hire, and even if it's just services, right? So at ELC, we talk about our why and our vision and our purpose and our values with our vendors, and we tell them where we want to go, and we talk about that as them being part of it and them being partners with us in that, and it gets them more energized to help us get there because they feel like they're part of it too.
So the red thread leadership, maybe you can expand on what that actually entails.
Yeah. So again, it includes 5 P's. So starting with purpose. So starting with why. Why do you do what you do? How do you deliver on that why? And then what can others expect from you? And then going into plan, which is the second P, which is looking at your vision, your strategy, your goals. What's your plan to get there? And then we start looking at processes. So based on your purpose and your plan, what processes need to be in place, whether they're existing or we need to create them. And then how do you build into your culture that continuous improvement so that you're always questioning your processes? And is this the most important is this the most effective way of doing it or the most efficient way of doing it? And really empowering those decisions at the level of the people who are doing the work so that they can raise those questions to say, could we be more efficient in how we do this? And then we look at positions, which is, who do you have on the team? How do you hire? How do you recognize them? How do you promote? How do you decide who you're going to promote, and how are you structured? And then finally, the fifth P is passion, which is really about beyond engagement in how do you connect people's personal why to the company's why, and so that they're being fulfilled in the work that they're doing, and they're excited to make that vision happen for you.
That's really interesting because I'm in the process because I'm a software designer, and we follow like agile or waterfall or user story, Six Sigma, black belt method. I'm Scrum Masters. I'm familiar with all that stuff because that's what I do day to day. But the
Right.
thing in the music world, for a lot of times we've had to deal with automation. We deal with a lot of digital tools now. We have digital audio workstations. We have like automated AI in some of our instruments that can help us say, "Hey, I want to use a bass line from some jazz piece," and it'll bring it in. I want to use some EQ that was done by Fleetwood Mac on their Rumors album. I want to apply that to this track. Boom, it can happen. So the thing is, like a lot now with the AI revolution happening, is a lot of people are like, well, should I actually use an AI A&R tool or a real person doing the A&R? Because now everybody's saying, oh, AI can do everything. So do you get like an AI business manager to to manage your strategy because it's going to do better than that person, or do you still believe in the kind of touch human effort of actually like I understands you, as your manager, and he's going to work with you with that human connection, or do you say, well, no, that can be robotic. I can use AI for that.
Right. Yeah, it's really getting back to your purpose and your vision. Why do you do what you do? Right? Is it about connection? Is it more about speed? Right? So if it's less about connection and more about speed, then that's gonna determine how you make those kinds of decisions, right? And into
Mhm.
it's not a one size fits all. It's really about, what is your personal purpose as a musician? What is it you want to create, and what's your vision? And what are the processes and tools that are going to help you get there? But then I also think that there's the other side, which is that we have so many, and as an entrepreneur, I face this too, right? We have so many tools that we can use. What do we really need to do to stay focused, right? And what are the right tools based on where we want to go, versus chasing those bright shiny objects that are cool but not necessarily that
Yeah,
are going to get us where we want to
just
go.
because cool. Well, it feels like AI is the cool, nice shining object, and everybody thinks because it's the new thing they're saying that you have to do it.
Right.
And I would
Right.
argue, like I'm kind of a experimental, analog, kind of organic type of musician. So my audience, if I start doing all my compositions with AI just because that's the new shiny object, well, my fans might say, well, that's not authentic. That's not like I go to see Peg because I want to hear real bass. I want to see something that's like fusion. And if I go and say, oh, I can use these tools, and now it's like he didn't really play that, then I might actually lose an audience. So you have to kind of like, who are your customers? Who's your audience? Like with the musicians, like we got to understand our audience. We can have worldwide audiences. We have markets in the Netherlands and Iceland, Australia. So just because you're not kicking in New Hampshire doesn't mean that you couldn't market your song to the Netherlands because that's where they like it. So we've
Yeah.
learned that like globalization is a lot of what we have to do. A lot of what we have to do is licensing. So like a therapist who wants to use music therapy, I can license some music to that therapist. I could license music to a website. I can license music to a video game. I can license music to people, which I did through BMI, my publisher. So like you can find different markets, and people say, well, you only can make money on Spotify. That's not necessarily true. You can go to all different types of markets, kind of wide open. You have to be imaginative to do anything today. You can't just stick to the old school markets, you have to realize that, what we do as music, it's a commodity and an art, and you can find ways to monetize it because people use it for advertising, for all kinds of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things technology has done for us, right? It's made it so that we do have more opportunities to get things like music and art out there, and where there were a lot of gatekeepers, like you were saying before. All those gatekeepers have been torn down by technology. We can access directly to the audience, and those audiences are everywhere, and because they're creating their own content, also need music for their own content, right?
Yeah, like independent game developers. You can find an independent game developer that's not one of the big game houses, and what we're finding as musicians is they are looking for people to score games like movies. And I'm actually
Mm,
working on a game from an independent developer, and it's being scored like a movie, and it's like an hour worth of music. Everybody says today, oh, songs should only be 2 minutes long, but I got an opportunity to score something that's like an hour long. But that's not what they tell you is the thing that's happening. But that's because you got to think out the box.
right. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and so the kind of musician I am, I like to do longer form stuff. So that's like, oh, that's like where I should go. I should go to these people who need this longer form stuff. So if you find the people that kind of fit what you're doing, instead of saying, oh, there's nobody doing it, you come to find out there's independent filmmakers coming out of film school that need people to do that. There's people doing all kinds of avant-garde stuff that need music, and you're like, wow, they need longer than 2 minutes. And like then suddenly you've got opportunities to do stuff that you didn't think you need that you would ever have the shot at doing, but you're not necessarily at the top 10. It's like how you get measured. People are always comparing themselves to certain lists, and it's like that's not on that list. So you have to figure out like how do you go outside that where you're thinking everything's only the Billboard top 200. But that's not
Right.
exactly the case. There's other things you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So does that happen when you have some business people who have limitations on their market because they don't have the vision to see that their market is wider than they thought, or do you get into that kind of conversation?
Yeah, I think that, it comes down to, um, people not understanding their purpose, right? So the understanding who you wanna be as an artist, understanding who you wanna be as a company. Why do we exist, right? What is it that we're trying to do? And, that's where we always start with our clients, is we start with their why. Why do they do what they do? How do they deliver on that why? And what can other people expect from them? So then they can start to see, oh, I actually, and we call it the why connection, which is like your superpower. And that once they get it, they can actually say, oh, I could actually leverage this in different ways that I never thought of, because this is what I uniquely do. This is my way of operating that's different than other people that are in my space, in my industry, in my profession,
Mhm.
right? Where they can say, this is what makes me unique. They can create their brand around that, and they can create their company culture around that if they're an entrepreneur, where like I as the founder have definitely seen how my Y connection is infiltrated into the culture of the company, and I hadn't even realized how much, right? And so now I use it in how I interview people, and whether or not they want to work for us, right? So once you have that and you understand what your superpower is, then you can really start to see open up to the possibilities of what are those other opportunities that I can use to leverage this, and what do I uniquely have to bring to the table and ultimately to the world.
So it's kind of like a niche thing. What I found is like there's like a micro level of people can get, they have a niche. They might think they're in the kind of oversaturated market, but they realize when they really dive in, they're doing something different. And so
Yeah,
then if you go to somebody that's trying to put you into the same clone, but you're really not that. But you were trying to say you were like somebody else, but you're not. Like I think it's like the honesty of realizing what you do and actually embracing the fact that yeah, this is a niche and we could take advantage of it. maybe we need like somebody that understands us. So like I think it seems like you need kind of micro customized marketing or marketing that's customized, kind of like customized medicine today. People are starting to realize that medicine isn't just for like you can't just make a pill for everybody. Sometimes there's certain types of medicines that have to be customized right to the individual, to like their DNA. And so I think that type of mindset seems to me be the future is that we realize that you can actually customize things and actually do something that you didn't think you could, that you could actually be more individualistic or more unique.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's going to help you break through in your marketing and your messaging, right? Is having that uniqueness that is only you. Then you've created your own lane. No, there's no competition there because it's only you, right?
Hmm.
So nobody's going to do it the way you do it, and nobody's going to have the same why as you. And so, and people will resonate with your why, right? When I think even more we see um, not just employees that are joining companies joining for their purpose, but also making purchasing decisions and listening decisions based on what their what that person stands for, and what is their why, and they want to join that tribe. They want to be part of that because they believe in that purpose.
Yeah, it just seems like even like if you think about companies are offering so many different customization options to a lot of things that if you buy material things, like if you say cars can be customized now. So like there's so many different variations. There's so many different, and it's because they're starting to realize that customers want to make the car a part of them, so they want to be able to customize it to a degree that's like beyond the stock. And so that a lot of companies like you get all these, third party companies start making these components so somebody can go and take that truck and make it uniquely their truck, or take that motorcycle and make it uniquely their motorcycle. And you start to see that. I mean, even with like, I'm a synthesist, and you can get customized synthesizer modules that you basically are building your own that you choose the oscillator, you choose the envelope, you choose everything. You build a Eurorack and it's your customized model and it doesn't match anybody else's and it doesn't sound like anybody else's. So it
Yeah.
seems like that customized marketing to realize that people are individuals and they don't want to fit in the box. They want something that makes them uniquely them.
Yeah, and they can express who they authentically are, right? Because you were mentioning before, like some musicians saying, "Well, I want to have, I might sound like this band or this artist, or maybe trying to copy or using AI to try to copy, and then it's no longer authentically them." And I think whether you're an artist or a leader or wherever you are, it's looking really understanding who you are and being able to express that in your unique way is actually what's going to catapult your success.
And also, I just would want to kind of also analyze this because one thing one of the reasons I kind of got out of the corporate culture and went as a consultant was, I'm a creative. And what I found is sometimes when I was in corporate structures, they didn't know how to deal with creative people. They kind of have this bell curve, and creative people can be on that kind of outside of that curve. We don't fit the normal measurement structure. Just like if you think about Einstein, he got D's, but he was one of the most brilliant physicists ever, right? So it's like, was that test measuring his capability? No, it wasn't. So it's like,
Mhm.
so when you get to companies, when they do that employee evaluation, sometimes they push out the creatives because they don't fit being measured that way. So if companies want people to be have creatives, I think they've got to evolve and understand the creative mindset that we don't always fit in the cookie cutter structure, and trying to measure us like Henry Ford, like in some automaton doing the same thing is not necessarily going to inspire extreme creative behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. My cousin is a great example of that because we use this tool called the Y.OS that helps you understand what your why is, and his why is challenge, right? So he loves challenging the status quo. And then how he does that is by finding better ways. And ultimately what he delivers is the right way of doing things, so repeatable solutions. And he got fired from almost every single job because he was in IT, right? So you can relate to this. He was in IT and he could see there's better ways of doing things, and he would challenge and say, like, we can break the box here, be more efficiently, be more effective. And the boss didn't like it, right? So like, you're telling us what to do,
Yeah.
you're telling us that what we're doing is wrong. And so he kept getting fired, and I kept telling him, you just need to start your own company so that you
Yeah.
can. I was like, because other companies really want these innovative solutions. It's just that you keep getting into cultures where they don't see the
Don't
value that
work.
you're bringing and seeing that superpower, right? So it is really looking, as somebody who is creative, number one, are you in the right company? Are you in a company that
Mm.
values that? And is looking to be innovative, because some companies aren't. Some companies are happy with the status quo. Now, I personally believe that means they're moving backwards, not forwards, but there are companies like that. And so it's making sure that you're finding the right company culture that appreciates that innovation, that wants to hear your ideas. And then also, are you in the right role, so that so that the company understands what you do bring to the table, and that maybe you're not in the right role. Maybe you need to be working for the innovation area of the company, working more in R&D, right? Looking at ways to leverage your natural skills and talents. And that's one of the things that we work with companies on, right? So do you have the right people in the right positions based on their superpowers, based on what they can bring? Because if you get somebody who is in a role where they really love what they do, and they're really passionate about it, and they're passionate about what you do as a company, they'll provide exponential results that you can't even imagine possible, right? When you get them
Yeah.
firing on all cylinders like that.
But when you see some of the top companies, we get the SpaceX and the Teslas and the Apples, where they take the people who are super creative and they give them a chance to do it, versus companies that say they want to do that, but when they run into that person, they get rid of them.
Right.
So they
Right.
go get a consultant and say, we want what Apple has, but you don't have the Apple culture, and you
Right.
can't just kind of hot fix the Apple culture and just say you're going to take your culture and make it Apple. If you're going to do that, you got to embrace what they're doing. And the problem I see is that people don't fully embrace it, and they think they can just kind of do it overnight. Have you run into
Right.
people who think they can do it overnight and don't actually want to do the work?
And it's also looking at, what's your tolerance for risk, right? Because if you're going to be an innovative company like Apple, guess what? You can have failures, things that aren't going to work.
They fail.
And
Yeah, that's part of the
are you
process.
willing? Yeah, exactly. And are you willing to take that on and say, we celebrate mistakes. We learn from them. We take that and move on to the next thing, and we take those learnings with us. Those are innovative companies, right? Which are looking to
Yeah, we have
have
to
that
fail.
tolerance.
I
Yeah,
mean,
it have that tolerance for mistakes.
part yeah, 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 I mean, that's the big problem. I think some people, they want the comfort zone of a repeatable thing, but then they want to be able to create something innovative. You can't do something innovative without breaking some eggs, which means you're gonna have like a SpaceX rocket blow up. It's not gonna be perfect every time. You're gonna have Tesla when it first came out. They had their Roadster, and that wasn't what the Model S is. That was you have things that don't fully carry over, and how that can't be sustainable. How's that going to run the whole company? And then you have to get to a point as a technical, like that was like a technological like showcase of what they could do that allows Model S to be created. And the problem is people don't want to put the effort into. Sometimes you have to overdo something, and then it becomes like the standard. And that first thing you do is going to cost a lot of money, and it probably won't make a
Mhm.
lot of money for a long time. And some people don't have the tolerance for that. So they think they're going to hot fix it or quick fix it, and bring a guy like me in and think you only need one. Well, your whole department needs people that do that, because if the rest of the people there, you can't do one. There's got to be a whole culture of those people, and if you only be the one guy, can't change everything.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And then if there's just one guy, then that person
because then
becomes
you're
the
gonna butt in.
scapegoat.
Yeah, yeah, because you don't have enough of a team. Everybody else doesn't really believe what that one person's doing, so then you just butt heads and then you get kicked out. But, yeah, it seems like, organizations have to have this vision for the future, but I think are they prepared for what it takes to get to that future? And so, and how do you prepare an organization that wants organizational change to have the pain of like baby steps or maybe not getting there as fast as they want to? And then how do you make them understand that maybe, speed isn't the thing? Is if you want a quality thing, it takes the time to actually make a quality thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes to it really starts with purpose again because people there's this idea of like you were saying where companies think that they even and we were even talking about people too, right? Artists, right? I want to I think I want to be this or I want to be like them as opposed to saying who are we really? And are we really
Mm,
that company that is gonna do we have the tolerance for risk to be an innovative company? Or are we a fast follower? Or are we somebody who, we let other companies innovate and then we take what they did and we take it to the next level. We're not going to be the
you
innovative
clone it.
company taking all the risks, right? So it's really
Yeah.
understanding your purpose and knowing yourself as a leader, as a company, in who you really are so that you can create a vision that isn't attainable and that you can actually be successful at getting to because you're starting from the firm foundation of really understanding who you are and why you're there.
Yeah, you get some companies they want to clone Honda, but lower cost. They get into the market and then eventually they start making higher end vehicles, and people, why would I buy a higher end vehicle from you? Because you're not Lexus and you're not Mercedes and you're not BMW. So it's like you came in trying to be low cost than the Honda. And now you want to compete with the Mercedes and the Lexus. Is that really where you're going to go? Is you can see people was like, well, maybe you can try, but you can. That's a kind of just a big example. But yeah, it seems like sometimes people don't know. It's like, well, yeah, I'm better at taking like a cheaper version for lower cost. Like when Apple made the AirPods. Now you've got like
Mhm.
10,000 copies of AirPods, from other companies all over the world. And it's like, okay, but they're not that innovative. They're just copying what Apple did, and but they do it lower cost. So would they think they could ever be the company that actually created it, or they were just going to be the company that clones whatever Apple comes out with next?
Right. Right. And it's really just understanding the lane that the lane that you're in and being the best that you can be in that lane.
Yeah, I mean, because I think that's what happens with music. When I deal with a person as a producer, I don't try to turn them into the next Taylor Swift or Beyonce or something like that. What I want to do is look at what does their demo sound like and make it their most authentic version of that demo version of themselves, right? So if I don't try to turn them into what's in the top 20, I heard something uniquely them, and I'm going to do everything I can to bring that out. And maybe that's using analog signal processors and using, like all kinds of knee board and all kinds of treatments to make their vocal the best vocal I can get using their unique voice, but not trying to turn that voice into somebody else's voice, but treat it with respect and actually make it the best version of their voice.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people lose sight of the fact that we can tell, right? When someone's not being authentic, not being authentically themselves, you can try to fake it, but people can see through it. So when you're really being yourself, that's what magnetizes people to you, right? Where they really see, oh, like I can feel them. I can feel that authenticity. I can see that genuineness. I can in their artistry. I resonate with that emotionally. I resonate with what they're trying to convey emotionally and the story that they're trying to tell through their music. people know, right? So you might get a quick flash of success trying to be somebody else, but it's not going to be sustainable because people can tell when when that authenticity isn't there.
It's kind of like the Dylan. Like I love Bob Dylan, but there was a period where he was channeling Arlo Guthrie and Woody Guthrie, and he was using his voice to kind of like that. Then he kind of you get to like Highway 61 and Blonde on Blonde, and then he suddenly gets this unique version of his voice, this kind of nasal thing he's doing on Blonde, and you're like, wow, it's like now he's not Chandy Guthrie, Arlo Guthrie. He finally found his own voice. And then that became like an authentic songwriter kind of iconic voice. They had this kind of, and it wasn't his normal speaking voice. It's kind of this character that he created, and it became like uniquely him. And it's like, identified when you listen to all of his famous, like Rolling Stone, all these early Dylan songs from the late 60s. You're like, wow. But if you actually see the journey, how he got there, he was cloning other people. He was channeling like Woody Guthrie, all Guthrie, folk singers, to find it. And then he finally found it. I kind of guess with businesses, maybe they have to realize that they go through that same kind of process. Like they all, now I
Yeah,
found my stride. I found my niche. I found it.
Yeah, some do. They they don't have to go through that trial and error though. I think there are ways to cut through to say, um, what is that you really want to bring? What is that value that you're bringing to whom? And how are you going about that? Right? I think you can start to establish that from day one, but it's being intentional about it, right? I think a lot of entrepreneurs kind of like you're saying, like do this testing and experimenting, and because they don't really have their own direction or their own purpose, they're just trying things, and they would save a lot of time getting really clear about who they want to be and what they want to create right up front.
Yeah, because I mean, one of the things I decided, when I was a musician, well, I'm a musician, but people want you to be in a lane. And from the day one, I said, you know what, my lane is called expansive sound. And people are like, what is that? Well, expansive sound means I can kind of do cross genre, which means I can have aesthetic with funk and jazz and new wave, and I can go in many directions. And so then I don't have, but the A&R people were like, oh, like, how do I sell that? Because I want it to be new wave. I need it to be I need to be trap. And like, no, it's expansive. But at the end of the day, when you make a lot of music, it actually is more expansive than genre stifled in narrow lane. It's actually crossing. I would argue a lot of new wave movement. You listen to a band like the Talking Heads or Blondie, they're hard to define. Like,
Mhm.
is that punk? Is that post punk? Is that new wave? Is that psychedelic? Is that what? It's us in all different areas. Blondie on the same album was punk, and then they're disco, and then they're rap, and then they were multiple genres all in one thing. And so that sometimes you have to realize, like, hey, I'm kind of a cross genre area. Maybe I'm going to try to do that. And people say you should be more niche, but even with this podcast, I decided to be more expansive. And people said like, maybe I shouldn't do that. But my 892 episodes being very expansive and not having a particular focus, but a focus of like, I want to talk to people who are interested. Maybe what that they say can help my audience who's into a very eclectic group of people they want to listen to.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my mentors taught me that what is commonplace in one industry can be groundbreaking and innovative in another industry. So the more that you're looking at things outside of your normal sphere of influence or your industry or your profession, and looking at other opportunities and how different companies are doing it, or different leaders are doing it, or different artists are doing it, then that opens up something that is every day to them, could be completely groundbreaking in what you're trying to do, right? And it's just a matter of getting that exposure to more and more things to open up your mind to bring that innovation.
Yeah, because like when you get a CEO that was in like, let's say he was into like laundry detergent, he's running a company that's doing that, and then somehow he gets into an automotive company. He said, well, it has nothing to do with what he was doing, but maybe he was a very good manager and was doing really well with the board of director holders, and that's why they wanted him.
Yeah, absolutely.
For the
Absolutely.
automobile company, not because he wasn't, he doesn't have an engineering background. So some automobile companies, they want guys like they needed to have an engineering degree. They need to understand what the engineers are doing. In the insurance industry, oh, we need a CEO that's an actuary because actuaries are king in insurance
Mhm.
and banking.
Mhm.
Like, and if a guy comes in and he doesn't know anything about actuarial, I was like, well, how can he be CEO? He's gonna butt heads with all the actuaries, and that's how insurance companies make money. Is how they price their products. And if that guy doesn't understand that, it's like, well, how is he going to run the company? But sometimes they would pick people from the industries, pick a guy coming in from a cell phone company. But what does he know about actuaries? He doesn't know anything about that. He doesn't deal with them. So yeah, so I guess you say to wonder for like leadership kind of decisions, is there some kind of criteria as who should be CFO, who should be CEO, who should be CIO?
I used to think yes, but then I've seen it work really well to say no. So, for example, one of my clients became CIO, and she was a controller in finance. She knew nothing about technology, and she became the company's best CIO. Why? Because she understood how to how to run budgets, how to run timelines, how to project manage. They're the only IT organization I've ever come across, ever seen that never missed a budget and never missed a timeline ever. And she knew nothing about the technology, but she had the relationships in the business and she knew how to run things to be able to have things be on time and on budget, right? And that sort of broke my mold in what was possible in an organization. So just like you said, like they bring as a leader, you bring different experiences and different
Yeah,
perspectives that can actually be you let the experts and she was really great. Let the technical experts be the technical
do what to
experts. I'm
do.
not even gonna try to learn that or be that. I'm gonna bring what I do well to this organization, and it was groundbreaking and amazing for the company.
Yeah, it's kind of like what I saw some guy that was arguing, like, why I don't like DJs as producers. I don't like because they're not real musicians. And I said, well, the thing is like if you go back and you look, um, that a DJ is very good at picking out grooves that make the audience move. They're very good at understanding what the audience likes. So when they become a producer, they're very good at actually helping craft a song that's actually going to connect with audiences because it's full of grooves. And you get surprised. It's like, wow, you don't necessarily have to have, be the best musician in the world to be that kind of producer. If you're a good judgment of the groove, it shows you can come from an outside place. You didn't go to Berkeley, and you're not like a phenomenal musician, but you're very good at identifying grooves. If somebody's very good with budgets, but they don't know anything about, you know, blockchain. And you get these blockchain algorithm guys, the mathematicians, they're like, well, he doesn't know anything about these algorithms, but he actually knows how to market your algorithms. And you don't know how to market it because you're a mathematician. So a mathematician's like a very, very good marketer, probably not.
Right.
It's like if you're going to sell it, it's still like a widget. Like what people started to find out is like the guys who can sell the widgets, the guys that can manage the budgets, even if they're not an expert in your area, they can actually do well in your organization. And then that kind of works on the different levels. Like, we get an analyst that was working in medicine and he said, well, he can't work in insurances or he can't work in banking. Yes, he can because he's still working with databases and database structures aren't that different. They're kind of all the same.
Right.
It's just what's in the data. It's still got keys, still got, it's still got structure. Almost all of them have to go to general ledgers. All of them have to go to, you know, some kind of accounting. All of them have to do invoices. All of them have to do billing. So if you understand that, it will still work.
Yeah, absolutely. And in some cases can bring best practices from where they came from into a new industry that's never tried that before, never done that before, right? Just because if you get sort of the same people moving around the industry in different companies, but the same industry, you're not really getting that external perspective that can bring that innovation or more efficient ways of doing things.
Yeah, okay, like a biomed company might want an actuary from a bank or insurance company because they want to tighten up their financials. And it has
Yeah.
nothing to do with whether you know the biochemistry to tighten up the financials. So it's like the problem is sometimes people say, well, you gotta have done the job to get the job. And like maybe you don't have to have done exactly the job, but kind of bring the new blood in so you get innovation. And I think that's where
Right.
people make the mistake is they think they gotta just clone what they have and they're gonna get some different result.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
How are you gonna get a different result from doing the same thing over and over?
Yeah, and not getting, diverse perspectives and diverse ways of seeing the world. I think we've seen this come up in organizations a lot in the past few years around, diversity and inclusion and having other voices and perspectives that that just see the world differently, right? And have different experiences, and they can bring great innovation and
Alone,
great ideas.
women. Yeah, because the world is like this is a global economy. So if you take somebody from Africa, or you take somebody from Asia, or you take somebody even like I'm an African American, but I was working in a company. There's nobody that looked like me in IT department. I was the only one. And then they're like, oh, they didn't know what to do with me because they're not comfortable. It's like,
Yeah.
but having the comfort zone, I was bringing some new ideas, and I got sent to Japan because of some of my new ideas. Because I came into Hartford, I came into that Connecticut area, the only guy that looked like me, and I came up with this idea of using graphical representation of flowcharts to get some very complicated algorithms explained to all different type of top level people, and to also be able to make it understood by all levels up and down. And because I did it that way, I got sent to Japan because they said, well, we're having trouble with the translation of the English to Japanese documents. But kids come in here doing these activity diagrams or like flowcharts, and the Japanese understand what he's saying without having
Mhm.
to translate it. And it's like
That's unique.
because I was willing to kind of think out the box because I wasn't in the same clubs or groups. That I was coming from a different perspective, and I was willing to do something different. And this is where the mistake is like keeping that room full of the same people just because you're comfortable doesn't mean you get any new ideas. The
Right.
example is if you bring somebody in that's from the outside, you get new ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you have more
So I
representation
think
of
that's yeah, your markets too.
your customer base too, right? If you have that diversity, there's a diverse world, like you said, right? So the more diversity that you have in the company, the more diverse ideas you have, but also your reflection of the people that you're selling your product or service to.
Yeah, because they can tell you like, well, this isn't going to go over it with this community, but you didn't have anybody from that community in the room, and now you do, and you're like, oh, I just assumed. It's like, well, what happens when you assume? so, my whole thing is like if you're gonna say sell to the Asian market, like you've never been to Japan and you don't ain't know anything about the zero defect mentality, right? And then you sell something full of defects, thinking that you can do it because you do it in Iowa. Well, it doesn't work in Tokyo, right?
Right.
It doesn't work. They don't want it, and so it's like there's a reason why Sony has a certain level of quality in their stuff in what they do, in the level of detail of a lot of their devices are very long lasting because they've built to like extreme tolerances that a lot of American manufacturers were like, yeah, I can't, we don't have to do that. But it's like, yeah, you do if you want
Yeah.
if you want, even just the companies like Apple and Samsung and a lot of IT companies will go to specific micro companies in Japan to pick certain components because they know the quality is so good that they only get they only take those components from those Japanese manufacturers because of the quality level that they know they have.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's
Absolutely.
there's sometimes it's like letting somebody have that culture and actually understanding it and then utilizing it in your own supply chain is actually a cool idea.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
So yeah, I think it's interesting the different perspectives you can take from your point of view because you're coming in where you decided that you want to do this as your own company. Like when did you decide that you had this idea that you thought it deserved its own wrapper, that your own business?
Yeah, I think that was as I mentioned, when I worked at Disney and had that experience that I had, and I really developed empathy for leaders, and my why is I believe success happens when we partner together to make bigger impact. So I'm not fulfilled if I can see that I could make a bigger impact and I'm not. So staying at one company and having an impact
Hmm.
there really also as an internal person, right? As an employee, there are things that I can say as a coach and a consultant in companies to leaders that I could never say if I worked for them. Right? So um
Yeah,
so
yeah.
being able to have more of that impact and I think most people spend the majority of their day at work. And when they're not feeling fulfilled and they're not passionate about what they're doing at work, um, that trickles out into everything in their life, right? So you have a bad day at work, that impacts your family, that impacts your friends, impacts your quality of life and your health. And so I'm really passionate about having people feel fulfilled at work because I can see how that has a ripple effect when somebody really loves their job and is excited about what they're doing, they're inspiring to other people, and we need more of that in the world.
Yeah, that's why I went into consulting because like working for one company, like what I get to do is like get to move from one project to the next project and it's another different company. And it's a different they end up doing something different or I learn something new or they want something the other company didn't want. And my father, he worked for the same company for 25 years and I just didn't see myself doing that.
Yeah.
And I just a lot of people in my generation, I'm age 55, but like we have moved around a lot more. And then I discovered like, being a consultant was perfect for me because it actually allowed me to do what you're saying. I mean, I thought about maybe doing my own company, but I said, you know what? I'm an artist and I want to have the time to do my art. So I made a decision like I don't want to be in charge of my own company in terms of the day job. But I like doing this kind of day job, this IT work, but I'll be a consultant. And then I can kind of satisfy the fact that I can do my art, do my podcast, and do this. And I don't have to be like on that track, but I'm still doing pretty good because I'm a consultant. So consultants get paid okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
so yeah, I can still it's not like I'm a starving artist, starving artist mover or starving
Right.
artist painter. I can do my art and do it the way I want to. So I don't have to be, beholden to an A&R guy. So I get to do what I want for both jobs. Maybe as a consultant, I'm not struck in that Fortune 500 structure, and as I don't have to deal with some record label saying they're not going to release my work. I can release whatever I want, and then I found a way to satisfy everything. And I think that's where people have to realize, like, what do you want to do? I kind of figured it out. I think people have to ask that in their own lives, like in their businesses, and seek somebody out like you to figure out, like, what do they do to get on that train.
Yeah, absolutely. And really understanding what drives them and what motivates them. A lot of people don't have that clarity.
So if people go to executiveleader.com, what's the first thing they find there that helps them like get started?
So we have a ton of resources. We've got a couple hundred blog articles on leadership and purpose. That we have Also at Red Thread Leadership, I have a master class on the Red Thread Leadership model where I take you through each of the 5 Ps, talk about how you implement them, how successful companies have implemented them, so that you can understand how to implement them in your own business, whether you're a single person entrepreneur or a bigger company, it's the same process.
Oh, that's cool. So everybody realize that those links that I have up right now will be clickable on the permanent links on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And when it goes out to the wider podcast world, because we're almost on every platform there is, those will be clickable. And we do ask people to, if you watch the episode on those platforms where it's clickable, please click the links because you're going to find a lot more when you want to dive into it if you click the links we provide for the guest we have on. And so we have both of those links up there. You can check out the Red Thread leadership one and the leader.com, and you'll be able to go right to it on the clickable versions. And that's part of the whole process of doing these podcasts is we get the experience, the knowledge that everybody that we talk to is able to give us, and there's a further development of that when you check out their links.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much.
Well, it's part of what we like to do. We also will give you a landing page. So your audience will be able to get this landing page that has everything. They'll have all the places you can get to. And then what we find is people, you don't know where they're comfortable watching or listening to a podcast. So we started to create landing pages. So it's like, oh, it doesn't matter what platform, you go to the one you want to. And so you can use that and give that to your audience when it will be available tomorrow.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you for being a guest on our program. We appreciate all the knowledge we get from, it's a learning process for us, like every time we get to talk to somebody new, we get the different perspective. And that's what we enjoy about being a podcast. It's kind of this world that we're actually, podcasting is getting to be pretty big nowadays. We've been out here for a while and we intend to stay here. But yeah, thank you again for being a guest on the Family Like the Ghost podcast. We think that everything that you've talked about can help a lot of different people with different types of businesses.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, and I've loved bringing the music element because I'm a big music fan. So it's been great talking to you.
Thank you very much, and have a great night.
You too.